beautiful November day, which I can't believe Thanksgiving is in a couple of weeks, and it's like beautiful outside. But so you guys are some hardy people. You showed up for the lecture on this lovely day, so we appreciate that. Obviously, there's coffee and tea and some snacks in the back, which you're welcome to. And if you're new to Lockheed, there's a couple people I haven't seen before that are here, and you're interested in being on our listserv and receiving our weekly event calendar of the things that we are involved in around Madison and on campus, we do have a sign-in sheet there in the corner of the table there. So that's all I have, all my announcements. I'll turn it over to Alberto Vargas to introduce our speaker today.
Thank you, Sarah, and welcome everybody. And it's my pleasure to introduce our speaker today, Professor Ivy Corpis. She got her PhD from the University of Michigan, and she's been here teaching in the Spanish and Portuguese department. And if I may say, I think probably the reason why we have a strong program here in Latin American, Caribbean, and Iberian Studies program is because in the 1930s, scholars interested in medieval literature came to Madison and planted the seed that later on flourished into what we have today. So we're very happy to have people with this interest here, and Ivy is a strong scholar in this field of medieval studies. And we welcome her to talk to us about the project that she's been working on. Thank you, Ivy.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and I think everyone can hear me in the back of the room. After 30, we won't say how many years of teaching. I can usually get to the back of my voice to the back of any room. And I want to thank Alberto for the kind introduction, and for Sarah for allowing me the opportunity to talk, and for all of you for showing up on what is a very lovely day. And indeed, I am a medievalist, and so I'm kind of like an interloper over into the Latin American area studies. But as you will probably see from the presentation, and oh my, don't take all my actions now and restart. Start never. Let's see if I can get this. Wouldn't you know it? Okay. Let's see if we can get that to go. Okay. Wouldn't you know, they always want to update when you don't want it to. So as a medievalist, I was trained in philology, and so I was always interested in texts and critical editions and all those types of things. And I had the great fortune of being part of that long tradition of medieval studies and philology, starting back in the 30s with Antonio Solalinde, and then Lloyd Caston. And when I came in, my first incarnation here at the UW was in 1982. That kind of dates me. And had the great fortune to work with the Hispanic Seminary of Medieval Studies, which was then located here. And started to work not only with scholarly texts, but with digital texts, what we now call digital texts. Then it was computing in the humanities. And the cutting edge, and some of the cutting edge work of that time in that area was done with John Nitti in the Hispanic Seminary of Medieval Studies. And so a lot of what I'm going to show you today is bringing what that group did into the digital age of the internet. Because especially the main point of what I'm going to be talking about, the Léxico Hispanoamericano, was first published by the seminary in microfiche. And so those of you old enough as I am to remember even pre-microfiche, these were the first publications of Boyd Bowman's work by centuries, 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20, which then was put onto CD-ROM. But as I'm going to show you a little bit later, even the CD-ROM publication soon became, as with all things technological, became a legacy program. And Fernando Tejedo is here today, and he, like other scholars and linguists, and I myself, have old DOS machines and old laptops scurried away in closets to keep some of these old programs running. So the point of my work and what I'm going to talk to you today is bringing some of those important corpora of information and texts and data onto the internet, so it can be used and open to all and is no longer in fear of going out of, in other words, we don't have to keep those old laptops going in the closet forever and ever. This is going to be very informal, and I'm also going to give a caveat, and you're going to say, well, thank heaven she's not going to talk forever. I have a meeting at 1 o'clock, so I'm going to end about 10:02, and you'll probably be very grateful for that fact. But please don't hold questions until the end. If you have questions as I go along, please stop. We make this very informal and very conversational. So in my work to make these legacy important corporate, which I'll describe in a minute, out there to live forever, so to speak, we got some funding for the graduate school and other places and started to work to put this on the internet. And while we're putting this on the internet, the Léxico Hispanoamericano, which will be the point of my talk in a minute, we decided amongst Fernando, Pablo Ancos, and I, as we're working and thinking about how to make this happen, to establish a portal. And so from a portal page, the URL is there, we're putting various projects up. So after paying due at the pricey price one needs to get their servers and server spaces, which is another conversation, we have kind of opened up this area which will hopefully allow us to put several projects online and open to scholars free of charge and totally open access. Most of this is done with the permission of the Hispanic Seminary of Medieval Studies, now located in New York, who holds the copyright on most of this data. And I'll show you this page in a better, my screenshots are a little fuzzy. They kind of look like how I see things with my bifocals out of view. But I'll show you the real thing live on the internet, which looks a little better. But when you go to the URL, TextRed is a portal de recursos digitales hispánicos. And at the moment, we have two projects up there, the Léxico and the Corpus of Hispanic Chivalric Romances. And there soon will, in next year, be a third project, will be the early Celestine editions with images. So we're going to have text with images. I'm going to show you a little bit about the corpus of Hispanic chivalric romances, just to show you. This is more show and tell than anything else, but they're important corpora that I'm hoping to make everyone understand we've got this out there for everybody. So if you click on the corpora for Hispanic chivalric romances, you get into that site, and I'll show you a little bit more later on because it's clearer on the internet than it is on a screenshot. But as you all know, these Hispanic romances, the Amadís were very widely read, very important texts. They not only drove Don Quixote wild and mad and were the parody of that work, but they were very widely read. The Catholic monarchs had them in their libraries. The conquistadores read them, and they had those ideas of exotic lands, travels to exotic lands, with exotic peoples, and fighting exotic peoples in exotic lands as part of their cultural imaginary when they came to the Americas. And of course, you all know, and so this is kind of the link to show you it's not, even though it's peninsular, there is a reason that I can talk about it here in the Latin American Studies program. It does have something to do with a wide breadth of information in cultural studies. And as you all know, in the Sergas de Esplandian, which is the fifth book of the Amadís cycle, which was first printed in 1496. We've lost that edition, but we have an extant edition from 1521. On our corpus site, we have a transcription of the 1525 edition. And just to show you how this might all link up, even from chivalric romances to Latin America, as you all know, the word California, as the name for the place, sprang from the chivalric romances. And in the Sergas de Esplandian, with these texts in their minds as they saw the new lands and the new exotic, and what they had to relate to the new exotic were these descriptions of things. And so on folio 95 verso, you have the description of California. Sabed que a la diestra mano de las Indias hubo una isla llamada California, mucho llegada a la parte del paraíso terrenal, la cual fue poblada de mujeres negras sin que algún varón entre ellas hubiese, que casi como las Amazonas era su estilo de vivir. And so that, these texts are important for a lot of different reasons and for a lot of different study. And so that's just to tantalize you that maybe you'd like to even look at the chivalric romance corpus. So, but let's get to what's really important here. It's the Peter Boyd Bowman's Léxico Hispanoamericano. This is, as I said, an important project. It is well known as an important data corpus for linguists, but for cultural studies, for a lot of different things. Peter Boyd Bowman, now deceased, was a linguist, spent many, many, many years reading many, many, many texts and culling citations on fichas, little papeletos, right, that we used to use to create dictionaries, and those of us who are old enough to remember card catalogs remember those things. And had all of this information, which, as I said, the seminary knew about this information and started to publish in the 80s at the technology of the time, these texts in microfiche. So for each packet represents a century's worth of data that he culled from various texts. Of course, these are very clumsy, and I still have a microfiche reader squirreled away in my basement, but not many people do. And so there was the movement among the seminary with the funding from NEH to put it on CD-ROM. And that made it very accessible. It made it interactive. There could be searches. And again, the seminary put this was a very important corpus and also funded by NEH. The seminary represents some of the earliest cutting-edge computing in the humanities, which now is digital humanities. And this type of work really was the cutting edge at that time. But again, this, as all programs, technology changes, operating systems changed. And this worked at the ultimate operating system of its time, Microsoft 98. Did not work on Macs and had kind of could get it to work on the various versions, first versions of XP. And so we all decided, and I especially, that, and Fernando was always encouraging, we needed to do something with this because we're all our old computers sitting in the closets just to keep this going. We're all fast disintegrating. So with the work done by John Nitti and Ray Harris to bring this to the CD-ROM corpus in place, we then decided to bring it onto the internet. The importance for this is that it's a small corpus. It's got 80,000 headwords. That's a lot of data. But if you think of it in other corpora, for example, the Royal Academy's, the Spanish Royal Academy's diachronic corpus, Corte, it's minuscule in comparison to these mega data corpuses. But it's recognized, and this is the importance of keeping it alive on the internet, is that it's recognized because of it has a diverse geographic representation of where this data comes from, and it has a large chronology. It goes from the 16th through the 20th century. It stops at about 1990. So even though it's small and if you're thinking of the big mega data corpuses now, it really is important for those issues and for that kind of great advantage which we have with this data. Okay, so as I said, it has over 80,000 headwords. Headwords, and Fernando will, the linguist will correct me if I get this wrong, but I'm going to give a layman's version so that you understand what a headword is. It's kind of like a dictionary, what you would find in the dictionary. It's the regularized form under which other orthographic variants of that word, or verb forms or adjective forms that reflect number and gender would be subsumed. So that if you search on the regularized form, it'll give you all the other various forms. So think of it in that terms. And also when you're thinking about this corpus, don't think that because there are 387 sources, which is a lot of sources, covering various centuries, that it's every word in all the sources. Think of this kind of more of the glossary. So that as Boyd Bowman was reading all of these 387 source texts, he didn't do every word. He was looking for the interesting bits, for definition, for novelty, for newness, for something, right? So it's not every word in every text. It's kind of like the interesting bits, right? But it is important that each headword carries with it the grammatical semantic context. There's a citation. It's not a great long citation, but it's enough to give you the meaning, the grammar, the syntax, the context. And it does have other information as well as the date, the geographic location, and the source. And I'll show you that. And that's very important. Because if you have the source identified, that if you want to read more from that passage, you can go and find it, and you can get more information. So again, from the microfiche, we moved to the CD-ROM. which was very great and was wonderful, but then we needed to bring that legacy product, which was outdated and couldn't be used by most anyone, to a place where it could live almost forever, but at least give open access to scholars and to give wider access to it. So this again is the portal page. And if you were to click on the Hispanoamericano, and again kind of fuzzy, I'm sorry about the bad screenshots, you will become led to, which I'll show you in a better version with clear resolution online, if technology works with me. You'll find where you can put in and search on different things. You can search on any combination of things. You can search on, for on the top line is location. You can search by give all the words in a given location, by centuries, by a single year, by a span of years, by a string, which you can think of as kind of like a regular expression search. Also by either by the text, by the word, or by the head word. And you can also limit your sources if you want. Because you think, gee, 80,000 head words, but if you do a word search, it's looking for wherever that word appears in any citation. And you can get tens of thousands of hits off of that. And so we also give warnings saying, you're going to have a lot of entries here. Do you really want to do this? And you can either continue or you can rethink your search. And I'll show you a bit of how you can limit those searches. But I'll show you an example here. And this was of doing a headword search. In other words, it's kind of regularized search under which orthographic variations are subsumed, because you all know that in the older languages, orthography was variable. So you'd have to do a word search, you'd have to search on all the different forms. A headword search doesn't give you as much information, but it gives you all in one place. So I used this because I already had this as part of the help manuals that I did, because it was my sample search as I was doing the programming with a very eager and very helpful computer science student. We used this because it had not a lot, but it had some orthographic variations, but it didn't have a lot of examples so that we could use it easily. And so this was our sample. Whenever we wanted to test if a new search worked, this was the word we went to. And it also is kind of interesting because it shows how this corpus contains information not only for the history of words and how they change or how they develop, but you can also find a lot of cultural information. There's a lot of plant information, food information, as well as things about ethnic groups. And this was one of the tests we all did on salto atrás, which if you do the headword search comes up with 6. And this is how your results would show. You run the search, you hit the search button. You're going to get 6 results for this, and it's listed in chronological order. So the first documentation, see if this works, it doesn't. This is the cat toy, but unfortunately I couldn't find my laser printer, so the cat said I could take her toy, but I think the battery's low. But maybe, okay. So there are 6 results for this. And these are the orthographic variations subsumed under the regularized form. The first one comes from Peru, from 1639, Mestizos de Negros e Indios que se llaman Salta Atrás. And this tells you the source text and the page in the source text from which this document comes, this citation comes. And we have a list of all of this on the site, but RAN is Pedro Ramírez de Águilas, Noticias Políticas de Indias y Relación Descriptiva de la Ciudad de La Plata, Metrópoli de las Provincias de los Charcos y Nuevo Reino de Toledo en las occidentales del Gran Imperio del Perú. That's the title. So we didn't want to keystroke all of that in all the time, so we used abbreviations, but we give you the abbreviations. But you can see chronologically where that word appears in these these texts that are used. Next citation as found is in 1762 from Santo Domingo, again from a text by Peguero, Historia de la Conquista de la Isla Española de Santo Domingo, and then 1770, again in Lima, and I can read you the titles, but I don't know that's necessary, but those do have importance as to where you could go to find more information. So if this is interesting to you and you really want to read more, you know where to go. And thanks to Google, there's some things I curse Google for, but I'm going to thank Google for this, and that's they digitized a lot of these texts. And so without leaving your seat, you can then switch over to your browser into a new tab, Google that text. And I haven't done all of these, but a lot of them I have because citations come up and I go, is that really right? And a lot of these are already out there online, digitized by Google. So we are now very thankful to Google because if you want more information, you're very likely to be able to get it for most of these things. Yes?
I mean, maybe you're going to talk about this later, but who's the main audience using this? Is it mostly, professors and academics and research, or other people use it?
At the moment, it has been mostly linguists because that was the main but I'm hoping that this is going to open up. It's useful for a lot of different people. Historians would find this useful. People doing cultural studies. There's 18th century data which would tell you a lot about some of the newspapers. They come from newspapers and magazines. It's a useful bunch of data. And it's not inclusive, right? But it has a breadth to it, a chronological breadth, a geographical breadth, and also a thematic breadth, because there's documents in here, there's contracts in here, there's novels in here, there's newspapers, there's periodicals. So it covers also a wide range of where this would come from. So I'm hoping that, and I know it would be useful to students doing projects, linguists, cultural studies, and what I'm hoping is that this is a first attempt to try to get the word out, that we've got a lot of very rich data sitting here at the University of Wisconsin. Okay? So that's just an example. Okay. In the last three examples, they go up to the 20th century, where you find this word found in the corpus. And again, in the last two are novels. 1839, Cuba, that's from Cecilia Valdés. And the last is also from a novel from Mexico, 1942. So it shows you how the word is used in various moments. Okay? Questions? Any other questions? Otherwise, I'm going to go out of this. I'm hoping, fingers crossed, and I'm going to get, if I can, aha, okay. Yes, okay. So this is a little bit better resolution, I'm hoping, to show you when you go to the search page, and you have enormous amounts of help guides, which I've written up to try to explain almost everything I can think of. We're working to make those bilingual, since some of the people in Europe are hoping for that, and we're going to get that. And also, if you just wanted to browse the 80,000 head words, you could manually, although I don't know who would, but just in case, we put them up there. And so just B alone has 62 pages of B's, right? So but in case anyone just wanted to browse the head words, you've got them there too. So say, for example, you just wanted to do a location and we also have, if I can spell right, we have drop-down menus, kind of like the Google Finder. So as you start to type, it'll show you the 10 words. It'll keep changing. It'll be the 10 words closest to the letters you've just typed, right? So here, let's try Puerto Rico. And if we just search on that, we'll see how many. It says, warning, you're going to have a lot of entries. Do you really want to proceed? And if we did say yes, just to show you how this would work, to see how many words just from Puerto Rico, there's 9,417. That's not bad compared to some of these which go into the 20,000s. I'll show you another thing which I'll show you again, but you can also use this search to filter your results. So say, for example, you didn't want to look through all 9,417, and you could go back and limit your search in various ways. But you could also, for example, put and say, show me all the results just with Isla, and it will bring them up. So that you can then use this as a kind of way to do relational searches, to find where does things from Puerto Rico have the word Isla or different things, and do different searches that way. There's all kinds of ways to limit and to use. So let's also try, for example, if you just wanted to do a head word, cacao. you're going to come up with 96 examples as a head word. And again, the head word search shows you this regularized form under which the variance, and there's the variant, is subsumed. And you could look at all of those. There's also an export function. You can bring them out as a PDF file, as an Excel file. You can copy and paste them. And again, you could search and look within your results and say, okay, so now I found all of these words. Where does it also appear with the name of the tree? And you're going to come up with 2. Okay, so you can combine the searches to see where things are combined together. So el árbol llamado cacao o cacagate, que es árbol de estas islas, sino de la tierra firme, a estos árboles en la Nueva España, en la provincia de Nicaragua y otras partes. And another one del árbol llamado cacao, y algunos llaman cacaguete, y su fruta, y brebaje, y aceite. So you can use to find different things and to limit those searches. You can also just search by a source text. And remember to clear it, like I sometimes don't. And the Mercurio Peruano is a journal, a magazine from Peru, 18th century. And I'll show you a bit of what we have from that periodística source. And again, we also have a list of all the abbreviations, so that if you don't want to remember all the 387 abbreviations for all the 388 sources, you've always got them at your fingertips to either identify or to look through. So the Mercurio Peruano, there's only a 5-year span. He looked through 1790 to 1795, as I recall. And so if we want to see all the words from that magazine in those 5 years in the 18th century, there's going to be a lot of them. 12,000 of them. But that's where you can, there they are, and then you can also search within that for certain things, or you can go back and limit your search. You can limit your search by combining for a specific year. You can use, look for a specific word. Since I see sagrado in one of the first entries, we will search for that word in the text, and there's only 5 results where that word is used in that magazine during those 5 years. So that's basically how it's working. There's all kinds of different ways you can combine these searches, and that's the beauty of it. You can combine the place with the time, with the location, any of the above, and you can do searches for a head word, or you can just search for a word. The word searches, though, will produce a lot more information, but a lot more information, because the word looks for every time that word occurs in any of the citations in the text, okay? Which can be a lot, but you can limit those in different ways. Anybody have any question at this point in time? Anything, want to see anything searched? Yes?
Thoughts about expanding?
Yes. And that's another thing I was going to mention as I show you a little bit too, again, the chivalric text. It's very dynamic. And we hope to add to it. So that was also a limitation of the CD. This was all you had. We hope to make, and I am the keeper of the database. And as anything, when human produces, any human production is going to have errors. And as much as Ray Harris, now deceased, checked every one of these entries from Boyd Bowman against an original, and in those times we didn't have the Google, so he was running off to the library and to interlibrary loan. There still are errors, and every once in a while I run a search and I find errors in the original database, and we go in and fix it. So A, it's dynamic in the sense we're always trying to eliminate and find those errors. And second of all, we can add to it. So as scholars find more data, we can now add it. So it'll be a dynamic thing. Just as the chivalric romances, we keep checking those errors and cleaning them up, as well as adding to the text. So it's very dynamic. And yes, it can be added to.
So is this accessible to the public?
Absolutely. If you go to the URL, and I can show it again, but textred.spanport.wis.edu, you go into a portal page, you can click on it, and it's open to absolutely everyone.
How is this?
On what is a very lovely day. And indeed, I am a medievalist, and so I'm kind of like an interloper over into the Latin American area studies. But as you will probably see from the presentation, and oh my, don't take all my actions now and restart. Start never. Let's see if I can get this. Wouldn't you know it? Okay. Let's see if we can get that to go. Okay.
Ivy is a strong scholar in this field of medieval studies, and we welcome her to talk to us about the project that she's been working on.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ivy.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and I think everyone can hear me in the back of the room. After 30, we won't say how many years of teaching. I can usually get to the back of my voice to the back of any room. And I want to thank Alberto for the kind introduction, and for Sarah for allowing me the opportunity to talk, and for all of you for showing up.
In the back, which you're welcome to. And if you're new to Lattes, there's a couple people I haven't seen before that are here, and you're interested in being on our listserv and receiving our weekly event calendar of the things that we are involved in around Madison and on campus, we do have a sign-in sheet there in the corner of the table there. So that's all I have, all my announcements. I'll turn it over to Alberto Vargas to introduce our speaker today.
And thank you, Sarah, and welcome to everybody. And it's my pleasure to introduce our speaker today, Professor Ivy Corpis. She got her PhD from the University of Michigan, and she's been here teaching in the Spanish and Portuguese department. And if I may say, I think probably the reason why we have a strong program here in Latin American, Caribbean, and Iberian Studies program is because in the 1930s, scholars interested in medieval literature came to Madison and planted the seed that later on flourished into what we have today. So we're very happy to have people with this interest here.
So good afternoon, my name is Sarah Ritt. I'm the Outreach Coordinator and Undergraduate Advisor for the Latin American, Caribbean, and Iberian Studies Program. Thanks for joining us on this beautiful November day, which I can't believe Thanksgiving is in a couple of weeks, and it's like beautiful outside. But so you guys are some hardy people. You showed up for the lecture on this lovely day, so we appreciate that. Obviously there's coffee and tea